me if I was nervous last night, and I said, yeah, I am. I feel like I'm going back to school. The last couple of weeks we've been exploring chapter 10 of Matthew's Gospel. And this week we start looking at chapter 11. And as a snapshot of chapter 11, we begin, and not in today's Gospel reading, but the first half, we hear that John the Baptist is in prison. And we get a sense that Jesus is maybe a bit despondent, for want of a better word, a bit despondent with the people. He almost seems to be describing them as contrary. If he says up, they say down. If he says black, they say white. If he says yes, they say no. You know what? No matter what John the Baptist or Jesus seemed to be doing, the people were unhappy with them. They could not be pleased. And there's that reference to, we played the flute, but you did not dance. Or we wailed, but you did not mourn. And these are references to like weddings. You know, we were joyful, and you weren't joyful with us. When we were sad, you wouldn't be sad with us. He says John the Baptist came not eating or drinking, taking that more that type of lifestyle, withdrawing, and it was said that he had a demon. Jesus came eating and drinking and meeting with tax collectors and sinners, and he was described as a drunkard and a glutton. No matter what Jesus or John seemed to do, the people were not satisfied. Nothing was good enough. And it ties in a little bit with what Lauren was talking about with the restlessness of the people. They were restless. But towards the end of chapter 11, right at the end, which is part of today's gospel, the tone changes. Even in the midst of being rejected and persecuted, Jesus still reaches out to the very people who are persecuting and rejecting him. He reaches out to those same people and he says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light." Now what is Jesus talking about? Is he talking about a real yoke? Real manual labour? Come to me, work for me, and it'll be easy. Look at the 12 disciples, they have an easy life. Or was he talking about something spiritual? I will give you rest for your souls. So what kind of yoke was Jesus talking about when the tone changes and he reaches out to those lost, restless people? The Jewish religious laws of that day had something like, I think, 613 laws to abide by. Laws that would make you acceptable to God. Laws that you needed to strive so that God was strive to do, to meet, so that God would be pleased with you. Unfortunately, the Jewish religious laws of that day had become a spiritual burden to people. It had become like a yoke. When we think of a yoke, we think of a beast of burden with a yoke. Or we think of yokes used in slavery. A yoke is not a positive, affirming image. Especially, if you said, "Look, take on my yoke. Here's a yoke." The people were weighed down and weary, trying to observe 613 laws. This was an impossible task. Rather than a pathway to God, it was an obstacle to God. It was impossible to meet. And you can well sense a sense of despair, spiritual despair. I believe this is why people were weary and tired, despondent, and at times without hope. And it is to this very crowd and to us today that Jesus said, "Come to me, all you that are weary and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, and you will find rest for your souls." In a way, Jesus is saying, lay down this heavy yoke that more religious leaders of the day have placed upon your necks, have placed before you like a stumbling block, and follow my ways, my teachings. Learn from me, Jesus says. Take my yoke upon your shoulders, which is not heavy, will not be a burden, will not weigh you down, which is a clear, unobstructed path to God. Not the way of the old, but the way of the new. The way of Jesus. That is the yoke that he was asking the people to put around their neck, which would not be a burden. So what is the core, at the core of Jesus' way, at the core of Jesus' teachings? I'd like to believe that it is love, truth, and hope. Love, truth, hope. These are not burdens. In a sense, these are like wind beneath our wings. Virtue. Love, truth, and hope. I'm not talking about modern day Judaism, but Judaism, the Jewish religious laws under the Pharisees of those days, those laws did not necessarily bring love. They brought obligation. They did not necessarily bring truth. They brought manipulation. And they did not necessarily bring hope. They brought weariness. They brought burdens. Spiritual burdens that weighed people down. However, our way, the way of Jesus, is a way of love, of truth, and of hope. And Jesus called those people and us today to take this yoke upon his shoulders so that we today may find rest for our souls. So how does this relate to us? How do we learn from this passage today? Well, as you leave this place, or if you're at home, when you go out into the world, which we know can be a dark, scary place at times. We know there's a lot of fear-mongering out there, a lot of misinformation. There's a sense of weariness, disillusionment, of fear. As we go from our safe places out into the world, I encourage you to take the words of Jesus with you. These very words read today as if they were spoken to you today. Come to me, all you that are weary and heavy and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, and you will find rest for your souls. Follow in the ways of the teachings of Jesus, ways of love, truth, and hope. Striving to obey those 613 religious laws would not make people acceptable to God. We are already loved by God. Rather, we should strive to shine as a light in the world to the glory of God. That's what we should be striving for. So as you go out into the world, I encourage you to counter apathy, hatred, and bigotry with love. As you go out into the world, I encourage you to counter rumour, misinformation, and falsehoods with truth. And as you go out into the world, I encourage you to counter despair, ignorance, and weariness with hope. Because that is the ways of Jesus. Love, truth, and hope. That is the path of Jesus to God. It is unobstructed. It is not a burden. It is light. And it will set us free. And give us rest for our souls. There'll be a test afterwards to make sure you remember that. Truth, love, hope. Amen.